Gaming for us was a passion. It was definitely a family passion. We would have fist fights within our family for how heated our games would get. Definitely one of those things that if you wanted to hurt me as a kid, that's what you took away from me. That was my one weakness, was I was always on the computer. I've always found that depressed people have very thick walls built up around them.
Yeah.
It's hard to push through. They put up a good front, and it's hard to see through that. If you've been living on with that face for so long, it's hard to really not show it. Putting up those appearances is like your number one priority typically, for some goddamn reason. It's just the way it goes.
You've been listening to my friend Vangardt, and this is the Emotive Podcast. I'm your host, Dan, and it's about 2 a.m. on Sunday morning. This podcast is going out on Monday. It's kind of crunch time to get this podcast done and edited for the week. And honestly, this week I've been feeling a little demoralized putting this show together, but been talking to some friends, and every conversation that I have just reinvigorates my passion for what I'm doing with this show. These conversations are so important for me. I always learn something from them, and with each one of these episodes, it's only going to get better from here. So thank you to my guests that have been on the podcast, who have had the confidence in me that we can have a good conversation and have something that's entertaining to listen to, and hopefully the listeners will learn something from us too. That's what it's all about for me, man. It's about bettering myself through these conversations, and it's encouraging me to be more informed and learn as I go, because I'm not an expert on really anything when it comes to the topics that we're discussing. But all of that aside, this week I talked to my friend Vangardt. We talk about his experience attempting to be a full-time streamer, the lessons he learned from that. We have a frank discussion about our mental health, which, again, I'm not an expert on anything, but we did speak from the heart, and it's not always easy to talk about, but I was grateful that he opened up and shared that with me. Later on the show, we just went over his career aspirations, which extend beyond Twitch. He's very passionate about what he does. I hope that you enjoy my conversation with my good friend. Please welcome Vangardt. Hey man, it's weird to call you Vangardt, but I'm here with Vangardt because, well, it's weird because I knew you as Yield before.
Oh man, I love that name. I still love that name. I would be using it if I could.
You'd be using it if people didn't mispronounce it, or what?
No, it's copyrighted, technically speaking.
Oh, okay. Explain to me what Yield is.
So it's actually from Dungeons and Dragons books, or novels, I guess, whatever you want to call them. I was from a particular character that resonated with me when I was younger. Yield or Jild or whatever you want to call it. I still don't know how to pronounce it myself. I just saw the word and I stuck with it, because once I figured out what it was, I was like, holy shit, that's really cool. But it's all it is fire water, or like a fire wine, whatever you want to call it, alcoholic beverage, if you want. That when they use it in a ritual, it gives the imbibers a ritualistic berserker rage. And if you know me from my gaming habits, I was usually a pretty angry guy when I was playing games.
Holy shit,
So
that makes so much sense.
yeah, it was just one of those things that kind of stuck.
So the name Yield makes a lot more sense to me. And by the way, that's spelled Jhuild, and it kind of was the start of a lot of memes in the Twitch chats, which is kind of where we met. I don't know if do you remember if I pronounced it? I can't pronounce the word pronounce, so the chances.
I only know one person who ever naturally pronounced it right without any help, and it was somebody who knew where it was from. So it was just pure luck.
If I was thinking of it now, I probably would have pronounced it Jild or Jeweled or Jahuld or Jayhild, Jahuld, Yield, Yield, like Jild. Yeah.
I don't even know how to pronounce it. I still don't to this day. I never bothered to look it up. I just thought it was funny.
I don't know if it's interesting for other people, but I always love hearing the etymology, the history of someone's alias, because Well, I was out at a gathering last night and I was asking because there's a bunch of people from this Discord, this local Discord that I'm involved with, and I asked someone, I said, "Do you guys ever go around the table and explain where your username came from?" And they're like, no." And I'm like, "Well, I always think that's interesting because there's always a story behind it." And I,
It resonates. It's always something that resonated with that person, and to me, that's always interesting because I
mm,
like it's always gonna be an interesting story if it's a truly unique name. Yeah, I think that
yeah,
always tends to go hand in hand.
yeah. So now you're known as Vanguard, and that came. Did that just came out of necessity, or was there
It wa
something
It was
behind that
more
too?
I was trying to get into a more permanent mindset when I was trying to come back to Twitch for a second time or so, and it was actually it's Vangardt. It's actually 2 words, not that I tell anybody that, but it's just for my own personal knowledge kinda thing. The last name Vangardt is actually the last name of one of my D&D characters.
Okay. That makes sense. Is there like any sort of other history, or is that just something you came up with?
It was just a name that I pulled from a D&D campaign of mine. It was one of my personal favorite characters. It was probably the character I played the longest, in my
Right.
actual in-person campaign.
Yeah. So you went from someone who consumed a lot of Twitch. I know you were involved in a lot of different people's streams. You're always someone who's passionate for games, and then you sort of transitioned into a streamer. But before we get to that, I want to talk about your passion for games. And I know that you might not think that this is an interesting story, but I feel like everyone has that backstory because if we are still playing games into our 20s and our 30s, which I forget, are you even 30 yet? You're what, 20,
31.
31?
Yeah, I
Okay.
just turned 31 about 2 months ago.
Yeah. So if you're playing games into your 30s, there's something that kept you there. So
Oh, man,
you must
it's a
have started
ritual.
early.
It's a ritual for our family for sure. My whole family is 2 things: artists, gamers. That's basically what you get out of us. My dad got me into gaming at a very young age. I mean, we were playing Duke Nukem, Doom. We would go to his office after work and use their network because having a network in your house in the early '90s was crazy. So we would
Yeah.
go to the office and we'd play Doom multiplayer, as a with him and his coworkers and us. It was an absolute blast.
Wow. So you kind of got exposed to like the social aspects of gaming at an early age too.
Oh, yeah. It was a family ritual. We would be pla It was me, my brother, and my dad. We'd even get my mom in every once in a while, my sisters. We had a guild, in Warcraft that was at least 5 of our, like, 8 or 9 of our family at the time.
Whoa.
It was pretty big. It was fun.
So, what's that like? You hear other people talk about how, their parents, like my parents limited my gaming. They didn't want me, they had me, they would let me play games maybe an hour a day, like if I had my grades up and stuff like that. But, it was almost like this like carrot and the stick type of thing where either I was a good boy and I was allowed to play a little bit of video games, but if I was bad, like there was nothing.
Oh, man. Gaming for us was a passion. It was definitely a family passion. We would have fist fights within our family for how heated our games would get. It was so fun though. I look back at it fondly even through all the little frustrating moments, but it was really definitely one of those things that if you wanted to hurt me as a kid, that's what you took away from me. That was my one weakness was I was always on the computer. I am today still it's even what my
Yeah.
job is.
That reminds me of my friend Eric from high school. His family would be the same way. There was this game called Micro Machines on Nintendo. That game got super competitive, and it actually kind of shocked me when I saw the two brothers, him and his brother Nathan, Eric and Nathan, just about got into a fist fight over that game, and it would just kind of blew me away because I never. That was like the first time I ever saw someone get so angry at a video game. I guess I
Oh,
didn't
man.
I well, I didn't grow up with that competitive mindset when it came to games, but it seems like that was sort of instilled in you. Did you kinda like
Oh, for us, definitely. We would have, if you want the kind of competitive nature that it bred in me as a and you've known me, it might come to a lot of shock to folks that play games with me, but I can get highly competitive and I'm not even thinking about it. It just happens naturally. It's something I have to like avidly work on.
yeah.
But we would have 6 and 7 hour matches of Command and Conquer. And if you've never played Command& and Conquer, it's just a top-down strategy game with military units and you're going at each other. There's only 2 factions. It was pretty straightforward in terms of games now. Games get insane nowadays. I loved older simple games, I still do. These matches would last 3 or 4 hours, and then we had a rule that you'd have to eat at the table. My dad is the one that taught me take the advantage when you see it kind of nature, because he would excuse himself from the table to quote unquote go to the restroom, and he wouldn't come back for 40 minutes. He was sitting at his desk just destroying our bases or
Oh.
sabotaging us, but he wouldn't break his own rules, so he would do things like destroy our harvesters, which is what would make you money, and then build camouflage turrets around all our exits. And we would notice this and we'd get mad and upset. We're like 8 and 9 at the time, right? And it'd be like, "You gotta play the game until it's done. We gotta play until it finishes. Keep going." We're
Oh,
like, "We can't
wow.
play."
Your dad is completely sabotaging your game.
Oh my god, my dad taught me to troll at a young age,
What the
man. That
hell?
man taught me so many things. Oh,
That's pretty amazing. So what
it was good times.
let's talk about like what how did you find Twitch, and at what point did you like what inspired you to want to stream yourself? I feel like everyone kind of has that moment.
Well, I found Twitch by pure luck. I don't even remember who showed it to me. I wasn't even all that impressed. I think for me, it was like, I was still looking at YouTube. I didn't see Twitch till after the Justin TV days, so I didn't get to see that first little bit. I couldn't even tell you what I was doing at the time. I was probably playing the hell out of Warcraft. That game took a lot of my time, and I think that's for anybody who played that one. But once I actually got stuck to Twitch, I actually wanna say you were probably one of the first streams I regularly hung out in.
Yeah, and did sort of the chat interaction thing surprise you, and was that sort of what drew you in? Was it like the people that you met?
For me, it was just people sharing the same love for something and not being a bunch of assholes about it. Because the thing is there's so many toxic channels. There's as many toxic channels as there are great ones. It's just a matter of finding them. There's so many nowadays, it's
Yeah.
rough. It's kinda hard to find a community you wanna stick with, but once you find that group of people, there's just something magnetic about it.
Yeah, I feel like it is led by the streamer themselves. If they allow a toxic chat to flourish, then it just sort of multiplies because the loud voices kind of drown out the quiet ones. So if there's more loud toxic voices, that's just kind of how it goes.
Oh, yeah, you're definitely tailoring it to what you want. It's what you make out of it, and it's what you allow as a streamer. Ultimately, you have the final say. It's your kingdom, right? If
Mhm.
you're letting that happen, then that you chose to let that happen.
Yeah. Who was the person that just sort of kind of was a springboard for you to start your own stream?
It was mostly myself. I like to try new things, and Twitch was always interesting to me. It was more the technological side. It was just so many small things to get working. I had never worked with streaming systems before. I didn't
Mm,
really ever deal with because Twitch is actually pretty heavy marketing too. You are a self marketer.
that's right.
You're kinda trying to sell your brand, so, to me, it was just intriguing that you have one person pretty much doing all of the work all at once. You're putting on a show, you're trying to design what's gonna be on there, you have to think ahead, you gotta be 20 steps ahead at all times, and you're the one monitoring all this stuff.
Yeah, and even though it's gotten easier over time, the quality standards keep getting higher and higher.
Oh,
When I
yeah,
first
it's
started, it was a cheap headset. It was game capture and chat. You could even do that with one monitor. Now it's like streaming PCs, it's 1080p, 60 FPS. It's all of
yeah,
these alerts, it's all this art
these
that has to go into it.
These 2
It's
PC setups, you've got,
yeah,
getting like you said, getting a private artist to not even just a regular artist. You need somebody to help build a brand. So you're gonna have
that's
somebody
right.
who with brand identity experience. You're gonna have, like, pro level audio and video setup. Oh, man. I mean, to the point of where they're even selling external capture PCs now. That is a new
Yeah.
marketing strategy is, "Here, don't build a second PC, buy one off of us."
Do you think the barrier to entry for streaming now has gone up significantly, or do you still think it's easy for someone to start out? No, we're not talking about building an audience, but just building a presentation that can be consumed by an audience that is on par with everybody else.
I think anybody can at what is nice is now you can quickly get a stream going. You can get a stream going in a couple of minutes. You don't need the art. You don't need any of the fancy stuff. You just need to know how to set up your keys and actually get going. Which I
True.
think the barrier of entry is probably the easiest it's been.
Mm,
But like you said, there's a huge difference between getting in there and actually making something of it. If anything, that
right.
part is at the hardest it's ever been.
And there's so many resources out there for people to learn how to do it, but are they good resources? There's just it's become like everything else on the internet. There's so much information and you don't know how to filter it. But I
That's
guess
a big
I guess
one.
the thing I've always told people is to find an experienced creator and just ask them. Most people are willing to share a few of their secrets.
Yeah, and I think that's the key is most people are willing to share to a degree, but if you have something unique, you don't give away what's unique, right?
Well, that's right. Just the basic audio video setup is a big deal.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's why you see all these websites that help you get going, but there's nothing that says this is the key because there is no one key. You have to find what makes you unique and what you stand out with.
Right.
No website's going to tell you how to do
Yeah.
that.
We talked, I don't remember how long ago it was, but you had decided that you were going to make this push to stream full time. For a certain period of time, you were gonna give it a go. You were gonna give it your full effort.
Oh yeah, there's been multiple times for sure.
Yeah, and what was like the motivation behind it? Was it a challenge to yourself?
It was mostly just, yeah, I'd say it was pretty much just me giving myself a challenge, just to try to get myself out of that comfort zone. I was trying to get in there. I wanted to figure out exactly what the strategy was because you don't. For me, uh, I learn better on the fly and doing things than I do watching somebody else do it.
Right.
I can take context from other people, and it does work like that. I can watch you and I can get a good idea, but for me to really understand the what needs to go on, I have to get my hands in
That's
there.
right.
And that was my big push is I had to figure out how exactly I was gonna do this. I didn't think I never go into it expecting it's going to work when I get into plans like this. Most of the time I expect to just blow up in my face. At least that way I'm not shocked. At the very least, every time I give another push, I'm going in with more experience and I'm better prepared for the next attempt, right?
Yeah. So what did you learn from that experience? Because ultimately, it didn't exactly work out as you planned. Obviously, you didn't become a millionaire from this.
Oh, of course, yeah, I mean, someday, someday.
What lessons did you learn from that experience? And how long was this that you did it?
It was I went for a few months. I burnt out real quick. I think that's the key. Especially when you're trying to go full time like that and you're trying to put all of your free time into it. My mentality when I first went in was I'm just going to stream whenever I have free time. I didn't really try to set a schedule because my plan was I was going to work, I was going to sleep and I was going to stream. And that way at the very least I'd figure things out. And obviously hindsight is 2020. I burned out so quick. I was probably burnt out within the first month. It was
Yeah.
miserable, and anybody knows that as that mood that you have shows when you stream. It's your personality. You're not going to hide problems. It's so hard to hide problems, like true problems.
Yeah, man. So did you find your expectations kind of changing as time went on,
Yeah.
or did you?
Oh yeah. The more I was doing it, the more I was like, oh man, I did not have any idea what I was stepping into.
Well,
It
you
became
you
very
got
obvious.
yeah, and you got into it, and was this last year?
It was about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Year and a half? Oh, was it that long ago? Wow.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, I've known you for 3 now, maybe 4?
Yeah, it's definitely been, I think, about 4 years. I,
Yeah,
I know that I know that I have screenshots of us playing.
it was back during the Armored it was back during Epoch. It was
Yeah,
about the same time.
I think I have some screenshots of us playing 7 Days to Die in late 2014.
You in that game, man.
I'm still into it, not as much as I used to be, but anyway, it's just funny. I have
It's
these.
good to have a game that you can just go to and have fun. It's so rare. As
Yeah,
somebody who's played way too many games to be healthy, it's so hard for me to name a game that I can go, "Oh, yeah, I could play that forever." I don't have one. I don't really get one.
So you don't have a game that you can call your own, something you can always fall back on.
I could fall back to a few things, but I wouldn't necessarily be happy about it.
Hmm.
I'd play it and I'd have fun, but in my back of my head, I know I'd want more.
What do you attribute that to? Because I think that's something that a lot of us go through. I go through my Steam games list. I probably have 300 and some games in there, and I'm just unhappy looking at the list. I could go A to Z, and I could be like, "Well, I don't want to play any of this shit," and I know it's not shit,
Oh, I know.
but what?
I'm the same way.
But a lot of it's multiplayer, and I think that for me, it's who is going to be excited to play this with me.
I think that's the key is over the course of gaming for me, I was a very solo player, but if I had other people with me, I used it to my advantage is kind of the mentality I went into it with. The more I played these games and the more I got hooked on that social aspect of it, it really changed how I decided to play games. And I started looking at games more and more less about the single player experience and more of who am I gonna have fun playing this game with? What is this gonna make amusing of like what are we gonna go in and do and have a blast? And it would really start to tailor my what I was looking at to be based on the people I'm gonna invite to play. And it kind of closed a lot of my options in
Hmm.
the end. Probably not a good thing, but I had fun.
I
So
think that's my problem, man. I think it's my problem is like I can't just rely on myself to have fun in games, and that's sort of what's led me to just playing less and less. I don't know. It used to be something I looked forward to all the time, but if I don't have others to play games with, people that I know, I'm not as social. I'm not as social just to go into a game solo and try to meet new folks. I gotta get better at that.
yeah, I'm over that. I mean, back in the MMO days, that's
Right.
how you got into a guild, right? You'd join the server and you'd figure out who was on the server and that's how you built your
Hmm.
communities. You were using what you had in front of you with all these other games and most of the communities moving from a single aspect or like a single game to the internet and it kind of broadens that pool of people to play with. I've kind of hit that uh like overwhelming choice issue where there's so many people to play games with and there's so many games to play that I
Yeah.
just kind of shut down. Like there's
Yeah.
just too many options. And every time I play a game in the back of my head, I'm always thinking, yeah, but it doesn't have this. And then I start to think about playing this or that. And then it kind of starts that circle of
Right.
playing a whole bunch of random crap and I can never make a choice.
And I always hate to make this excuse, but just my age, I'm self-conscious about. For example, I didn't even question it at the time. I used to play Counter-Strike, and thinking back, I think I was like 24 and I was playing with kids that were like 16, 17 years old. It wasn't weird, it wasn't creepy. We just did it. Now
Yeah.
if I think about playing with kids that are below 18 at my age now, that's like I just don't even go there. I'm like way too old for those people.
When you start to tie an age to a lot of this and you're starting to see this new generation of younger kids getting into these games and stuff, it is something that
Yeah.
kind of glaring. But I've always tried to not necessarily look at age as much as just who
Yeah.
that person is as a whole. Your age kind of tailors your personality to a degree, but I mean, to me, I've met younger kids that had
Right.
more maturity than I did. So it's you never really know what you got to get.
I mean, I think you're right. I definitely don't. I don't. Well, for one, like I said, I don't really meet new people playing games nowadays. It sounds kind of sad. A lot of times I don't. Occasionally I will. It's just one of those things that just sort of happenstance. Like you're in a public game and the people are chill. So then you're like, oh, add me to your friends list or whatever. It happens very rarely. But I wouldn't just be like, "Oh, are you under 18?" Everybody like, "Oh,
Right.
let me see your ID before we can play together." It's not like that. It's just more like you said, the person's personality than anything.
I don't really ever try to, like, actively check, but I think you kinda know in the back of your head, you can kind of almost immediately gauge within about 6 to 7 years, like, "Yeah, yep, okay."
Yeah, so you mentioned that what kept you going with Twitch is some of the relationships that you've made. Talk a little bit about that and what's kind of inspired you to keep going since you had your full-time streaming experiment.
At this point, I'm just enjoying the ride.
Yeah, scheduling your time when other people are available you kind of have some set schedule things that you do now.
I do. I'm not super hard on my own schedule. I'm not. Anybody who knows me knows the saying tends to be for me that I'm going to be late to my own funeral. I'm not on time to anything. It just doesn't happen.
You have these people that you've met that really do kind of just keep you motivated. And you said that there was some folks that you've met recently that
Oh
just click
yeah.
with you. And I think that's kind of a rare thing with online relationships, that you meet someone that you really connect with. Because we do, if you think about it, we do interface, especially through Twitch. You do see hundreds, thousands of different usernames kind of flying by.
It's a sea of people, man. It's a really scary sea of people when you really look at the size of, like, the Twitch community as a whole. The to find somebody that sticks out in that sea is rare, and to me, I think it's a wonderful thing when it does happen. It's just not something that happens often. So, as somebody who uses Twitch, and I think you get this, you tend to stick to that community and you don't really branch out too much. You tend to find people to follow based on the circle you're already in, and you're
Mm.
kind of comfortable with that and you call it good. When I got back, this kind of goes back on our previous topic. When I got back into Twitch, I was pretty depressed at the time, and it was kind of one of the reasons I was trying to push so hard on it was I was just trying to find a way to occupy my time, and I was in a pretty bad spot, and that's kind of when I finally took another break and just tried to get in things realigned, my priorities fixed, so to speak. And during that time, I actually ended up, I don't know who it was, but GTA RP was getting really big at the time, and I ended up finding Milton T. Pike as one of the GTA RP streamers, and I don't know why, but we started talking, and a little bit here and there. I followed him for a couple of months, and he definitely helped me out through some rough shit, and I ended up, I don't even know how, but I ended up having a quick talk with his brother, TechSmith 314, and holy shit, one conversation with that guy, and it was like immediately we both knew, yeah, we're gonna have to play some games, and we've been just playing shit nonstop for like the last few months now.
Instant,
Instant,
instant romance.
yeah, instant bromance, exactly. Like I've said this before off stream. We had that quick conversation, but like I have known Dave since I was 12 years old, and I've known his brother probably about the same. Other than those 2 and, like, very rare instances like you or Nedtick, and I only have a small number of folks that I truly, like, connect with, and, Tech just out of nowhere just surprised the shit out of me, and it's been a blast, it really has. Like, it's gotten to the point sometimes where finish each other's sentences kinda shit. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's rare to find someone like you who has such passion for games and someone who takes care to like educate themselves. But I want to go back to something before we get into that.
Sure.
You had mentioned kind of about your sort of emotional state when you had taken a break. Did you feel like some of that was brought on by your time on Twitch?
Um, no, but I will say Twitch probably
Okay.
didn't help. Uh,
Right.
I was already kind of in, like, a bad spot. I've been dealing with depression, and anybody who's dealt with depression understands that you never really beat it. You just kinda
Right.
have to work through it and compartmentalize it and kinda see what you can do and just keep moving forward. And, at that point in time, I
Hmm.
wasn't at that state. I wasn't stable enough to be at that state, so I was kinda just going all over the place and trying a lot of different things to just try to make a change in my life. And I mean, ultimately, if anything, it helped me get a better focus. So I can't really even be
Hmm.
upset at the time. You don't see that until the end, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, Twitch. You do feel like it's kind of like exposure therapy in a way, because you get you start your stream, you're live in front of, you feel like you're in front of the world at
Oh
times.
man.
When you're depressed and when you're feeling vulnerable, you turn your camera and your mic on and you're like, well, this is permanent. Everything I say, it's going out there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's so frightening. Any like like go oh man, I have full respect. I mean, it doesn't matter how shitty your stream is. If it could be the best thing in the world and it could be the shittiest stream out there, like full respect for just clicking that button and turning
Yeah.
things on because God, is it nerve-wracking. I've been doing this for years now, and every time I go live, I still have, like, a mini freak out, like that miniature panic attack
Right.
as you're just trying to make sure everything's going okay. It's so bad.
And I'm just gonna get real with some of my emotions about streaming. It's a really I've always been self-conscious about it. I've always been anxious, and
Oh, yeah.
I've never really felt like I'm good enough to be on. And all I've ever really been looking for when I stream is just somebody to tell me that I'm okay, that I'm good enough. Yeah, I'm always looking for approval from people. I'm always just looking for somebody to say like, hey man, I'm enjoying this. You know, I'm always looking for that from people. And I know it's kind of a vain thing to
It's rough.
yeah, it's but it's rough.
It's rough.
It's rough
I mean,
because here's the thing. Until I hear it from somebody, I always assume that I'm not. So,
no, I mean, like, imposter syndrome is real, right? Like, I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it too, is I don't necessarily like it's so tough because when I'm going out there, you're really putting yourself out there on a line when you go to stream and you're really saying, do you like what you see? Right? Because there's really no better way of putting
right.
it because you're either gonna attract folks or you're not.
Mm.
And it's a real pain in the ass either way you go. Because if you don't end up having good results, you end up having to go back and analyze and reanalyze and try to figure out what to do right.
Mm.
And it just starts a really crazy process that's both exciting and terrible.
And a lot of times, man, I won't go back. I won't go back and watch my damn videos. I can't stand it.
Oh, I
I
hate
can't
watching
stand
my
it,
own
dude.
videos.
I can't stand listening to my voice. You know, I go through on this podcast and I got to re-listen to the whole thing and edit it, and that's easier because I don't have to look at my own face. But I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm not like that. But
I'm the same way. I hate there's a reason I don't use a webcam is I don't like putting myself out there in terms of
mm,
webcams. It's not necessarily that I don't have the gear. I mean, I have the gear, I have the green screen, but I'm much more in a comfortable state for streaming and I feel like I do better when I'm more comfortable.
mm,
And if that's what it takes is just not having my camera on to be in that state,
yeah.
I'm okay with that. It's a little bit of sacrifice.
I just found that my voice is a bit more monotone, and I don't have the highs and the lows. What does the low sound like? Sounds like just me. So having the camera helped me express myself more so because my face is more expressive than my voice. Although
Yeah,
yeah,
for me, the running joke's always been I have a resting bitch voice. It's just monotone. You get what you get. Sometimes I sound a little bit angrier than normal, but I always sound a little bit angry. It's just the way
oh,
it
I can
goes.
tell when you're angry. Just kidding. Goes back to the firewater thing.
For sure, man. No, man, it's true though. I had a lot of I had I it's it kind of runs in the family, but I had a lot of bad issues I was dealing
Mm.
with, man. I feel like I'm 10 times better further ahead than I was before, that's for sure.
So I've heard people say this recently. I think I relate to it as well. Is with depression, people say like if you're down, if you're not feeling good, it's this spiral that happens where you don't want to expose anybody else to it. You don't want to talk to anybody about it because you don't want to bother them. And you don't want to drag them down with you. Is that something that you can relate to as well?
Oh, for sure. It's one of those things of where I don't like being a bother, right? I'm very self-sufficient when it comes to my work and stuff. I don't want to have to rely on somebody else in the end. Even when I'm working on work projects and things like that. I don't mind working with other people, but ultimately my goal is to make sure that I can get this done without any external necessities.
Right.
And I've always felt like that when it comes to like emotions and stuff too. Like if I'm having a bad day, it's not I don't want to burden you with the fact that I'm having a bad day, right?
Mm.
It's a very conscious thing.
And what's really helped, and I definitely relate to all that, dude. That's I don't know. I feel like people out there, if you're hearing this and you relate, just know that you're not alone in this. And the only
Exactly.
thing that we can do for each other is just to make sure that in our group of friends, no matter how big or how small it is, reach out to one another and check on. Like if you haven't heard from somebody in a week or two, chances are that person could use just a hey, how you doing? Just something like that. It goes a long way for me when because
Oh yeah, for
that's what
sure.
can break me out of it is when people reach out you have to pick up on these social cues from people too. If they seem withdrawn, if they seem anxious or depressed, just kind of dig into it, and you have to know how to approach it. You don't want to say stuff like, I know how you're feeling or anything like that. Just find a way to ask these like leading questions to let them talk and just listen. I mean, obviously I don't know anything about therapy. I don't know how to be a therapist to others, but I'm trying to learn.
I've always found that depressed people have very thick walls built up around
Yeah.
them. You know, it's hard to push through. They put up a good front, and it's hard to see through that. If you've been living on with that face for so long, it's hard to really not show it. Putting up those appearances is like your number one priority typically for some goddamn reason. It's just the way it goes.
Dude, what fucking sucks is that, social media people are they're looking for that boost. They're looking for that plus one. They're looking to see those hearts. They like to see the positives. They like to kind of stay in this bubble because it is this like, what is it, the dopamine release that you get from it. And when people are depressed, sometimes if you had an honest feed of how you were feeling, then it would just depress the shit out of everybody because you'd be like
Right.
showing your real face. So if you're one of these depressed people, which a lot of us tend to be for whatever reason, I don't want to be this way. But if I was honest with people all the time, the people would shut
Oh yeah.
themselves off from me.
Oh
That's
yeah.
the way I feel.
If it,
So that sucks.
when you have to put up a face for so long, it gets really frustrating. I think that's one of the things that kind of helped push me forward was I was just so frustrated with putting on this face, and I've just been tired of it, you know? And so I've kind of along with my kind of mental shift, I'm not hiding this shit. Like this is what you get. It sucks. I'm
Yeah.
working through it, but I mean, this is me being real.
Does it help you? Because I've noticed that you've been doing better lately. Like, has it helped you once you've kind of had that realization where you're not so tightly wound, and you're able to kind of express yourself more?
Oh, man. Night and day difference. There's a lot of stuff I can't talk about right now that I'm also working on.
Of course.
Uh, uh, but it's just one of those things of where, that mental shift to kind of finally just take those first steps and trying to make a change, a permanent change. Oh, I've been it's almost like that million-pound weight
Yeah.
has finally been lifted. It's been a night and day difference, and my only worry, because that's just how I am, my only worry is how long is that
Yeah.
gonna last, right? So, I'm trying to get as much as I can done, while I can.
Here's the thing, man. I feel like I can only speak for myself. I feel like if all of these things kind of line up with everybody, some of us can at least take bits of this. Like I feel like we operate on momentum. So someone like yourself, you have some positive things happening in your life. You want to keep this feeling going, so you make those changes to keep it going, and you have to know that you're going to have setbacks too, but you just got to know that you're rolling downhill, man. And the
Yeah.
downhill is the positive, right? That you, it
Yeah, you just gotta make sure you can handle the
yeah,
bumps.
that's a good way to put it. I think that especially creators, people like us that go through down times, we try our best to lift other people up because we don't wish our the way that we feel on anybody. We're not trying to drag people down with us.
That's a really good way of putting
Yeah.
it, man. I think if there's one thing I want is I don't want anybody to have to feel the way I like how miserable I've felt
Yeah.
before because it's such a terrible
Yeah.
feeling. Oh, that's my cat.
Hello, kitty. No,
Hey.
it's such a double-edged sword, and I don't know if that's the right way to put it. I'm awful with analogies, but it's this thing where you don't want to drag people down when you're streaming, but yet you feel like you should anyway because you don't want to let people down. So it's like this weird loop where if you're in that negative mindset, you don't want to drag people down. So you don't want to go live and have this negative output, but yet you want to be there to lift people up at the same time. So it's a mind
Yeah,
fuck.
it's my mentality has kind of become it's not about me. You know what I mean? It took me a long time to kind of get to that point. No, and I mean, ultimately, this, whether or not this makes it or not, I think the thing that was a big shift for me was, I was so focused on I felt like I was so focused on everybody else, but in the end, I was still focusing on myself just because it was just that spiral just kept making me like want to get out of it so bad. So as I was almost like reaching out to as many people as possible, and whether or not those were good or bad interactions, you don't really know in the moment, but fuck, man.
Yeah.
Once I started to try to shift through that, it really changed my mentality, and I've been just kind of truly trying to just make life a little bit better in any way I can without any ulterior motives or anything like that,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I'm so happy to hear that, things are changing because I can you say that you have a monotone voice, but when I talk to you, I can hear it in your voice. I can hear the positive energy behind it. You've got some stuff going on that's keeping you moving in the right direction. So that's great, man. You can't you when you have these conversations, you can't avoid the inherent negativity behind it because that's just life, right? And these changes that you make have to come from yourself. There can be someone leading you by the hand, but you're always relying on yourself in a way, right? At some point,
Oh,
at
exactly,
some
exactly.
point, you have to make the effort. And but that being said, there's a lot of people that can help. And to sort of move on to other things to talk about, I am going to provide some links in the show notes for people from a fellow creator on Twitch, Coco the Louder, who's provided a lot of free resources and ways to deal with some of these thoughts. If you want to do research on your own, if you want to reach out and find help, there are people out there that are trained to do this sort of thing, right? So you're never alone,
Right.
and it's just I guess I'm just grateful that it is okay to talk about this stuff now because I grew up in an age where men were not really allowed to talk about this stuff.
But no, I agree. It's one of those things of where, You I never really had an outlet to talk any of that stuff or talk about any of that stuff, growing up. I really didn't. So, I mean,
Mhm.
who knows how long I was dealing with the issues that I was dealing with. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still dealing with issues now, but it's so much more manageable than what it was. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's like the cliches go, man. Your damage begins when you were a kid. So and it doesn't necessarily have to do with whether your parents were good to you or not. It's just things that are inherently with us. Like,
Yeah, you don't know what starts that. I mean, I had a perfectly I mean, don't get me wrong, we had a big family, but
yeah.
I couldn't name you any one thing that caused the problems that I had because I mean, it's just typical growing up.
Yeah, I mean, my mother committed suicide when I was 3 years old, man. Depression and addiction were always something that were a part of my family tree, and I was warned about these things at a young age, you know?
Yep, same here, man.
It's just something I have to deal with, it's something I'm aware of, and obviously, if you're listening and you're having those thoughts, again, I've got links in the show notes for you, some resources from people you can reach out and talk to. Anytime I mention suicide, you got to bring up that there's you can talk to somebody right now.
Definitely.
Yep. I don't know. I guess I bring up these things because I'm always looking for somebody to relate with.
No, I agree. I think that's one of the worst feelings is when you feel like you genuinely can't relate with somebody, like, that you just feel absolutely alone, and I mean, when you hit that point, it's hard to get out of there.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
is.
So I always like to leave these topics, these like dark topics on a positive note. Obviously, we're both in a good place right now. Because if we weren't, we probably wouldn't be willing to talk about this stuff as
Exactly.
in depth.
It's so hard to even get out there and discuss it in the first place, so, I mean, just the fact that we can actually get it out there is such a
Yeah.
huge
The
change.
positive thing I would say is just that I've gotten to a point where I notice I'm more I notice and I acknowledge when the feelings are coming, when the depression is coming. I acknowledge it, I give it its space, and then I kind of force myself to reach out to somebody in chat, whether it be family members or people online. I found that I can be open with just about anybody about this stuff. So, but that's just me. Everyone has their own process. I won't say like, well, that's what you should do. But that's my positive takeaway is that I've my coping mechanisms have improved. So and for you, like what are some of your like coping mechanisms, things that have helped you?
Sticking to a plan. I think, I may not always be on time, but just scheduling things ahead of time to give me, just to, like, make sure that I have things to do, I have
Right.
like, I have things to keep me busy, things like that, just to help me work through, like, bad times and things like
Mm.
that. Having a goal in mind is always key for me.
Yeah. Something my therapist said when I was in therapy about a year and a half ago was that she told me that I could have up on my whiteboard or whatever piece of paper a list of minimum things that you can accomplish in a day. And then you might just add to those things. And as long as you're getting your minimums done and you're taking care of yourself, that's a positive. You have to look at sort of the glass half full. If you really want to get better, you got to
I
start somewhere, and you can build up to a healthy routine that will help you just get better. And
A step forward is a step
yeah.
forward, right? You're still moving forward to get, to getting through your situation. It's rough, but they add
Hmm.
up.
And get off the damn social media too sometimes, because
Oh, it helps so much. I've cut off everything but Twitter. I think that's
yeah,
about it. And I'm pretty half-assed with
yeah,
Twitter. Everybody knows that.
yeah.
I really don't put a lot of effort into that one. I should.
Because I'm just gonna say it, like, that doesn't those types of interactions ultimately are just, they're just not that's just not where your happiness is going to ultimately come from. One-on-one conversations and groups of friends and all that, that's that's where I find my joy from. And another thing for me is, like, if I'm feeling down, if I just look around for somebody who needs help, that can give you a big boost too. Just looking for somebody who needs help, you know, it can that can really make a big difference in your life.
Yeah.
Kind of see give you a better perspective of what's really going on.
Don't be afraid to give a little
So
bit. Just, like, be there for somebody else, and, it makes huge difference.
damn right, man. Let's get back to the things that I really liked about you. When I was getting to know you was how you did have a critical mindset when it came to games. You did have not you didn't necessarily go with the popular opinions about certain games. You did dig into these technical limitations of some
Oh, yeah.
games, and you did, yeah. But there was a shift. There was a shift there at a certain point where you've kind of relaxed your stance on some of that. So what changed with you?
It's it's still there. It's one of those things where I don't forgive these games or these developers for, like, some of the crappy things they pull or anything like that. But I've gone from being super critical and outwardly critical about it to, like, I still wanna enjoy the good parts of the games and have a good time, and that's more of where my goal is now towards. When I started to shift from my highly competitive nature to a little bit more of just playing games to enjoy it, which was way easier said than done. It's still something I work
Right.
on, but I mean, I enjoy competition. It's so fun. When I started to shift towards the more social aspects, it just I didn't wanna be the guy to ruin the mood and complain about stupid things, right? They're stupid, but that's not the point. Like, the point is to play a game with my buddies and have some fun and call good.
Hmm,
So, once I started to shift from that, I mean, I still notice these things, I still make note of it and mentally and that kinda stuff, but so, like, when somebody mentions it, it's like, "No, I get
hmm,
you," but I mean, I think of things or I notice a lot of particular things, or, like, there are certain aspects of certain games that stand out for me. Now, for better or for worse, I know it's like, it's not something that you wanna do, but, I do tend to automatically just start to categorize games in my head because I mean, when you play so many games, they all just kind of blend together. So, like, I like notice certain mechanics in certain games are across the board with small tweaks here or there, right? You got your Call of Duties and your Battlefields and everything else like that. To me, yeah, they're two different games, but it's the same game to me. I'm just shooting things and getting a score.
Right.
It's so when I don't really care at that point. I just want to play the game and have fun because even with the minor changes, it's a new experience, and that's kind of where I'm focusing more
Hmm.
nowadays.
Yeah, and if you do leave yourself open to these to these games, you never know. You might find something that grows on you, or you might try a certain game that you never knew that you would get into. And something that you've been getting into recently that I kind of got the role playing. I kind of got bit by the role playing bug a few years ago, getting involved with the D&D campaign.
Oh man, it's so rough.
You've kind of had this D&D background, but now you've kind of you've been pushing forward with it a bit more. You've been getting into role play. You want to host your own D&D campaign. Well, you have been for a while, but now you're kind of working up the courage to stream it on Twitch. Is that right?
Yeah, more or less, we're getting there. I've ran a couple of games in the past. Most of them were always in person. Going from an actual tabletop to a virtual tabletop is such a hard shift. So we had a minor game using third-party software, and it didn't go too well. It was interesting, but I didn't put my full heart into it, and I knew I didn't. I was still more or less figuring out the tools versus playing the actual game, and it just didn't turn out right. So we're gonna go at it again, and it's taken a long time, but I think we finally have something that's gonna be a lot more
Mm.
interesting. Different rule set and everything else like that should be fun. I want this to go right, and that's just the way I am. Is so I don't want to do it unless I can do it right, and that's why it takes so long to work on so many of these projects.
So are you interested in it on the DM, the dungeon master side, or also as a role player?
Both, definitely both. As a DM, I love. I think we've talked about this before, but I love stories. I love like unique universes and fantasy history, things like. I mean, the whole idea of that is just intriguing to me. That this universe exists with so many rules and everything else like that, and it's just somebody made it from nothing. It came out of. I mean, eventually, obviously they're going to be pulling aspects and everything else like that from different ideas and worlds and stuff like that. But you can really do whatever the hell you want when you're playing these
Hmm.
games.
Do you think that you find yourself more drawn to role play than anything else, or is this just sort of alongside of everything else that you play as far as games?
Oh, this has definitely been taking up way more time than everything else that I've been working on. I've worked on quite a few projects in the past, like for both personal use and business and blah blah blah. And every once in a while, you know how this goes. When you're working on a project, you finally find your hang of it, and you kind of get into that setting, and you kind of go on autopilot, and just it just gets done.
Right.
Very few times do I actually work on a personal project, and that's what happens to me for like a personal, like something I really want to do for me. And when I started just with one idea for this, it was just like a parasite that wouldn't go away until I just started writing it down. I'm now like 20 pages in, and drawings all over my work and everything else like that. It's just been like I've been possessed writing all this out. I'm so excited for it just because there's so many aspects to it for both being a DM, but also getting to finally contribute a little bit to the RP community
Yeah,
with my own piece. It's finally me giving back to everybody else that's been given so much is kind of the way I see it.
that's awesome, man. That's great. Do you relate to this? Because I feel like I always want to put my feelings on others, but I feel like maybe you relate to this, okay? I streamed games for a fucking long time for since 2011, dude. I've been doing that, and it always kind of felt like this isn't really creating. I'm just playing the game and chatting. It doesn't feel like creating. Do you feel like now that you're actually writing and making this game, your D&D game, you actually feel like you're creating now versus
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, when I'm playing a game, that's just it. I'm playing a game, I'm talking to my community. I can create content to a degree by making something funny. or whatever you want to do. You get your, but it just didn't feel the same to me. I am making something that's my own. I'm building this from scratch, and I'm actually making something new to that nobody's seen before, I hope. Like,
Yeah.
that would be awkward.
Yeah.
But it's such a different feeling, and and I've never felt this excited to work on something in terms of, like, Twitch and even just, like, sharing it with the world kind of
Yeah.
situation, right?
Yeah, and the expectations for that, is it to get the reaction from the audience, or is it just to make something that you yourself are proud of?
Oh, man, that's tough. I think it's a little bit of everything, right? Because you're kind of going out when like with our earlier talk, right? I'm coming out with this thing, I'm saying, "Here's this thing, do you like it?" And you kinda have to hope it doesn't suck. But
Right.
I'm kinda going into it more like just a learning experience. I'm hoping that I can get in there, show what I've got, kinda get a little bit of feedback, and we'll eventually make something that I'm proud of. I'm going in with a happy mindset that I hope we got a good base, and I'm going in with some intriguing people, for better or for worse. We'll see how this goes. Not only with the folks that I'm going to be starting with, but I've already been talking to other people to get in to come play, which we'll have to discuss some other time because I kind of want to get you in there too eventually.
We'll
Uh,
see what happens, man. You never know.
it's just I'm trying to take the opportunities that I have, and I want to see what we can make out of it.
Yeah, and that's all you can do. And as far as like the expectations for it, you have to put forth your full effort no matter what no matter what, because otherwise what's the point? That's the way I feel. I feel like
Yeah.
some of your competitive mindset from playing games is going to bleed into this new creation of yours
I can feel it. I can feel it, but I'm hoping it's not necessarily in a bad way. I'm
in a
trying
good
to,
way, man, in a good way. Like just like I said, that 100% effort. The way that I felt when I was playing these competitive games, if I'm on a team and you're not putting forth 100% effort, if you're, I get freaking pissed. So
oh, yeah. Oh,
if,
yeah.
but if it's just you and you're in it and you're just relying on yourself, you know that you can put forth that effort and make it.
Yeah, that's just it, is
Yeah.
I have nobody to rely on this but me, and so that's the thing is that's one of the things that's taken me so long about doing something like this is I have to be self-sufficient.
Mm.
I had to figure out a way. I'm not an artist. Anybody who ever asked me, I I can barely draw a stick figure. Now I'm okay with, like, Photoshop and things like that, but that to me, that's not the same
Yeah,
thing.
but
Um,
art is so many different things, and
right.
what you do, you can look at it as art. It can have different dimensions to it that you can get help with. Like you can get help with the actual like physical or digital art that goes along with it. But your
Exactly.
story, your presentation, that's art too, man.
So I wanted to at least use what I was good with versus, like, basically playing to my advantages. And
Sure.
so it was just a lot of having to decide the right planning or what the play styles are.
Mm.
There's a lot of back end things you have to figure out.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that I could go in with everything set up. And I'm
If
hoping that
and
we'll see.
if you pull yourself in too many directions, if you're focusing on if you're like trying to teach yourself Photoshop and you're trying to become I don't even know, man. Like I got a lot of respect for people that do all their work as like a YouTube creator because
It's crazy,
it's
right?
crazy, right? The same way with people that have high level Twitch presentations that do everything themselves. It's pretty incredible.
I'm
But
always blown away by some of the presentation people can put in, like, especially knowing them, like, when you know it's a one-man team and it's not like a PR team doing it
yeah,
for them. Oh, man, it's so
it's
insane.
mind blowing. But what I'm trying to get at is like if you're trying to teach yourself all these other skills, if they don't come naturally to you, then you're kind of drawing energy away from what should be your focus and like leaning into things that you know you're good at.
Exactly.
That's the key. And the goal of this isn't necessarily fame, fortune, things like that. There is this like just therapeutic feeling from creating something that you know you put your effort into and you have this good how else can I say it? Having a good opinion of yourself for the effort and the things that you know you're good at. What's the word for that? I don't know.
I get you. I'm ultimately I'm going in and I just want my whole idea behind this is I just want to I love stories, and ultimately, I wanna be able to provide a story. I wanna make a good story to go along with all these other amazing stories that I'm always reading or watching or just being a part of, and
Mm.
I just wanna be able to contribute my own to that, and we'll see, hopefully it turns out fun, we'll see.
So this mysterious new campaign will be debuting on Vanguard's channel sometime in the near future. We'll have some links in the show notes. You guys can go follow his channel. But we're not done talking yet because you told me about some of your future goals that I thought was pretty interesting. I know that a lot of people that get into streaming, they have this sort of linear mindset where like I'm going to make this work. I'm going to be on this path where I put in X amount of hours. I'm going to see this growth and this is going to be my thing. That's it. That's it. I'm going to be I'm going to be a full-time streamer and this is going to be my job now. But for you, this is maybe almost like practice for maybe a future career in video production and things like that. Talk a little bit about that and maybe like what you've done so far and what you'd want to do in the future, possibly.
Oh yeah, I mean, so I've always been when it comes to Twitch, I like streaming. Streaming is fun to me. I've never been 100% sure it's what I want to, do with my life, but I like the aspects of it. Right. Ultimately, I'm more interested in the tech side of it. I love the setups. I love the production side. I suppose would be the right words for that. I've always been about working behind the scenes. I like to see how things work, and I like to see what I can do what I can to make those more efficient here and there. That's just how I've always been. And so that's what always kind of drew me to Twitch was just kind of the technology behind it all is always changing. I mean, every year we have new products coming out. And, I mean, one of the big things that we were just talking about earlier is our Go XLRs, right? This is, this one product replaced, a couple hundred to $1,000 to $2,000, depending what your setup range was for your audio with one box.
Yep.
I mean, that that technology alone is such a big game changer for like in terms of barrier of entry
Yep.
for Twitch and just streaming as a whole. Because I
Hmm.
mean, they're going to use it for other websites as well, right?
Yeah,
But
this
it's
this
just
podcast powered by Go XLR, not
yeah,
sponsored.
go XLR. Yeah.
Not sponsored.
But I think it's to me, Twitch is going to be going in very interesting directions very quickly over the next few years, and I'm quite excited to see where they go. And I'm hoping to eventually kind of get my hands in there myself, just to be a part of it.
Yeah, so you participated in an event called Landfest with a mutual friend of ours, Aphrodisiac, that he's been putting on, or he had been putting on for quite a few years, and it's just talk about that event more
Oh yeah,
and what kind of interested you just being a part of it.
that was Landfest, and I was excited because that was the first time I got to meet Afro in person, which was awesome. But I was actually helping him with the back end side of their streaming setup for Landfest, which was a 3-day, it's like 2 or 3 nights of just straight up LAN gaming. Yeah, everybody hangs out there at night.
In San Diego, right?
San Diego. No, it was, Folsom. It was over
Oh,
by Folsom, that's where it
oh,
was.
okay. I didn't. For some reason I thought it was San Diego. Go ahead.
It's all California to me. So,
Right.
um, but so we had to set up what was it, like a 4 desktop, or like 3 desktop setting with 4 different monitors. We had to set up multiple stations up front to have 2 streamers and then the third streaming PC and the production PC was in the back. And to me, I had never seen a setup like that before. That was actually my first time working with such a advanced streaming setup, and the production side of me immediately sold me. And so that was to me, that trip was worth it alone just for the learning experience.
Yeah, and what were like what kind of light bulb moment did you have? Like you thought that this would be a job that you would really like, this would be a career that you could see yourself doing.
It was more or less like it was more or less like a confirmation that I was in the right direction more than anything else. I've
Okay.
always been a hardware guy. I built my first computer like no joke before I could like walk properly. I've always been working with computers. I was building my own PCs, my whole life, thanks to my dad and his job. So like I've I've always appreciated hardware, and I thought about going server side with my current job, But when I started working with the production for Twitch, I was like, this is legitimately mixing two of my different passions all right here. This is what I could do to kind of move forward if I really wanted to. And now it's a matter of finding something that works with that. But
How do you feel about this job in video production where you're essentially like a carny? You're putting on an event, setting up, and then you move on to the next one. Would you be okay with
oh
that?
yeah,
Traveling for
for
work?
sure. I've always loved traveling. I mean, I get bored very easily. I'm one of those people that I kind of have to stay busy. Otherwise, I just get into like a bad like pattern of just being bored. And I don't want to say self destructive, but you know how that goes. Um,
Yeah.
so when it comes to having new experiences to work with, I feel like especially when it comes to the streaming, and if you're going to be using something like a community event that moves from state to state or anything like that, even just basic streaming, every day is going to be different. You have to be ready with that production value. And so having somebody to
Hmm.
actively sit there swapping scenes or getting the right cues going, adjusting lighting, adjusting audio, handling all those the connections in between. There's a lot of work going on there. It's a lot of experience.
Yeah. Well, I think that with the passion that you have for games, with the passion that you have for hardware, I think that it would be a natural fit for you.
There's a lot of going on with it though. I mean, to me, it's more about the hardware. I love the hardware aspect, but there's so much more to it too. Because I mean, there's that community aspect, and you're building that community around this passion,
That's right.
this singular
Hmm.
this singular passion that's being shared with everybody. And I think that just
Right.
goes so far to have that connection with everybody, and having that same passion in one room is just crazy.
Right. But do you feel okay with being behind the scenes rather than in front of the camera? Because as a production guy, you're not necessarily. It's a little bit of a thankless job because you might hear people say offhand comments about like, "Oh yeah, I enjoyed the video. I
Yeah,
enjoyed the production value was great." But more likely, you're going to hear when they don't like it.
if I can
So
get a job done and not have to be bothered, that's a win-win for me. So
perfect. Well, hey man, I think that we've covered a lot here. I'm so happy that you're on a good path because I recognize early on in talking to you that you're a talented guy. You have a lot to say and it's not bullshit. You have things to back it up with. You have the knowledge, you have the experience, and I've always wished the best for you. So hopefully, when I talk to you again in the future, we're going to be talking about your new career in production. I'm putting a lot of pressure on you, but
someday, man, we'll get
I
there. We'll get there. I appreciate the talk though, man. This was a blast. I'm so happy you invited me to this.
yeah. Well, thanks for doing it. And like I said, I think the sky's the limit, my friend.
We'll see. Only time will tell, man.
All right, so tell people where they can find you
Oh, it's that part.
to check out your D&D campaign coming up here.
You can find me at on Twitter at just Vanguard Vangardt. And I'm on Twitch at
Yep.
the same thing, twitch.tv/Vanguard. You'll find mediocre content, but I'm an all right guy. So
Eh, don't sell yourself short. All right, well, thanks again, man. This
thank
has been
you.
fun, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Our music is by the incomparable Data Rebel. Emotive Podcast is produced and edited by me, Dan Dahlstead. You can find us on social media at Emotive Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. My personal Twitter is at orangesherbet. On next week's episode, I talked to my friend Adam Fellow about UFOs and what we feel is causing the surge in popularity that you see in the mainstream media lately. I want to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode.